Three tools needed to show a home. I'm Demo Dalianis.
And I'm Derek Barnado.
And we're going to talk about that today. Welcome to the Real Estate Game Plan Podcast, where we bring you inspiration, actionable steps, and knowledge to build your game plan to take your real estate business to the next level. My name is Demo.
And I'm Derek, and we are licensed real estate brokers and your hosts for this podcast. Let's get started.
All right, so you have your real estate license. You're getting ready to show your first buyer. Congratulations. Getting ready to show them a property. So what do you need to do first, Derek?
What do you need to do? So I have my real estate license, and you mean I can't just go randomly show houses?
Hello, knock on the door.
I may need an appointment. So you do want to make an appointment to show properties.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that you can do that is through the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are in the MLS and you are looking at property, typically buyers are looking at properties online too,
Mm-hmm.
just randomly. Maybe you've already set them up to receive daily or weekly emails, whatever the case may be. They want to go look at 123 Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
So you go in as the agent. You are looking at the agent view, and you're going to be able to see more than the general public's going to be able to see. Yes, you can see commission, but you also can see showing instructions, and you have the ability to make an appointment to see the property. So that's really going to be one of the first steps that you will make. The only step really before that would be you are going to need an e-key, right, through Supra. So you'll want to have that. It's an app that you're going to have on your phone that will enable you to be able to get into a house. And don't be afraid to practice doing this. Maybe you want to make an appointment just to see a property as an agent in a neighborhood. I know one of our themes lately has been being proactive. I would definitely toss that into that bucket as a recommendation to agents. But we're going to make that appointment to go and see the property.
That's right. Yeah, and you're, like Derek said, you're going to book that through MLS. There'll be a little highlighted feature there that says schedule a showing. It will right now feed back into your showing time portal. If you've never been there before, it will ask you to set up a profile. So you'll put your information in. You'll be able to put your picture in, phone number, all of that stuff. So the key features to be able to do that is that it allows you to set up that account. Now you can download the app, have it available. You can also tie it into your calendar. And so if you have a Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, whatever it is, you can tie it back in through a feed. And so now when you book a showing through showing time, it's actually going to feed back into your personal calendar. And now you have your list right there and blocked out, which is more important, right?
Yes.
Blocked out on your calendar. So it's a way to keep everything straight and scheduled. It's also a way that you can actually feed that with your clients through showing time platform. So there's a lot of good features, but yes, that is step number one to be able to request that property. And Derek mentioned in the private notes inside the MLS system, definitely read those like we suggested, because you may see some other things there, dog being kept in the garage or cat in the bonus room, don't open the door type things, or
Please turn lights off,
alarm system, gate codes, all these different things. So the last thing you want to do is get to the property and realize, now I have to go back in, read those notes, call the agent in a panic, and they say the notes are right there in the private notes. So definitely probably not the best way to start off as a brand new agent showing your first property. So just make sure you read through it, be thorough, schedule it with plenty of time for your clients and for you to get there. Travel distances, if you're in Atlanta, it can take, an hour to go a few miles if you're especially inside the perimeter. So make sure that you book that time and know those routes and be able to meet your client there to show that property. So first tool is showing time inside of the MLS system. You can access it outside, but inside the MLS is the easiest. Second system you touched on was the e-key. So can you expand a little bit on that?
Yes. So the e-key is essentially the app that is going to enable you as the agent to open the lockbox. So most properties listed in the MLS are going to be on Super Lockbox, and so that e-key will enable you to be able to open up the lockbox and obtain the key that will actually open the property. And I will just throw in, when we are scheduling the showing, to don't be afraid to give yourself a little bit more time, because one thing that you might want to do, and I typically do recommend, Demo, is getting to the property first before the buyer. You may want to go ahead and take a moment to go into the property, familiarize yourself with it just briefly, turn the lights on, make sure everything looks buyer ready for when they get there. So if you need 10
Definitely.
or 15 extra minutes, don't be afraid to go ahead and tack that on.
Yeah, I love that point, Derek, and I think that's critical. And the way that we typically express it to agents is it's not your job to make that home clean and go in and do those types of things, but you do want, when your buyer gets there, to be able to see it in the best light that it can be with a 5-minute flip of the light switch. If there's some blinds in the back of the home that's really dark or something, just turn the blinds open. And really that's from a light perspective, but also as the person's walking through there may be something in the back of that property that they can see when they first walk in that front door, and maybe they don't like that. But maybe if the blinds are closed and they go out the back door and see it, maybe it's not as big of a deal. So, you're doing yourself favors by doing that. You're also making the home presentable, and you're welcoming them in. Another little tip is, and I know Derek believes this too, is walk around that property, because you've probably already done your research. You know that there are 4-bed, 3-bath, 2 levels, maybe with a basement. But if you walk through that property and say, okay, there's that room, there's that room, there's that room, here's this and this. Now you're familiar with it, and you can either point out maybe some inconsistencies. Maybe there's a really narrow hallway that goes to the 3rd bedroom, and maybe it's not really a 3rd bedroom because it's above the garage and it's too small and it doesn't have heating and air and there's no bathroom. So maybe there are things like that before you get to that level and end up showing that client that room. You can actually point it out beforehand, or at least about it to be able to answer questions. So being prepared, I think, is key on that. Love the idea of getting there early and making sure that property is in a good light. So E-Key, anything to wrap up that?
Well, I will say another benefit of being there early is you've already obtained the key. And especially if you are a new agent,
Great
the
point.
very first time, which is why I love the agent previews for this, but if there are issues with getting the key out, and this can happen with seasoned agents too. You don't have to be new to have an issue getting the key out, but you've already gone through that without someone behind you, because you're going to feel like the spotlight is on you when your client, when your buyer is there watching you open it. Try to get the key out and see you struggle. So that's just another thing you can avoid.
Great point. Actually on the lockbox, when you have your lockbox for your listings, you can go in and program it for a certain time to be able to open. And so if that lockbox just by chance wasn't scheduled to be open, but you can still book the showing on showing time, then you may get to that property. And if that lockbox is timed out and not in the time that it can be opened, then you will have an issue, right? So being there early can help combat that. And then also your app, your E-Key app, does update a lot. And if you're in an area that doesn't have cell coverage, you may be in a spot where it's trying to update instead of being able to actually let you open that lockbox. So being able to just be there early solves a lot of issues. Plus, it also looks professional when your client gets there and you're already there and they're not waiting on you. So another great point to be able to allow time before, and maybe your first few appointments are scheduled a little bit longer, just so that you do have that time, even after the client leaves, maybe to just take in everything, close up the lockbox, make sure you're not feeling rushed. You don't want to get home and look at your keys and find an extra key and realize you forgot to put the key back in the lockbox. So that's another point to maybe wrap that part up about the E-Key.
Yes. And there are lots of different ways that an agent can show a house, and I don't look at it so much as the right way or the wrong way, but one recommended way is to let the buyer take the lead first. And so following what we have talked about, you've arrived at the property first, you've turned on the lights, you generally have familiarized yourself with the property, so you can let the buyer take the lead, let them walk through the home. You don't have to point out the kitchen, the living room, all the obvious parts of the property. Maybe there are some unique rooms and features that based on the conversations that you've had with that buyer that they are particularly looking for, that you can point out. So you are more enhancing the showing versus guiding them through in many cases. But as they are finished in an area, you can go back through and you can turn those lights off and just kind of keep everything flowing for sure.
Great point. We want to put the property back in the condition that we found it with lights off and fans off and things like that. So
Yes.
definitely a good point there. All right. What is the third tool in our discussion today? Home snap.
Home Snap. So I'm going to let you kind of tell us a little bit about Home
Yeah, yeah.
Snap.
So, HomeSnap is an app. It's essentially a web platform, but it's an app. If you're in FMLS or Georgia MLS, you already have essentially access to it, complimentary access. You can show a property by printing the FMLS sheets, Georgia MLS sheets, and going through the property, having it in a folder. A lot of agents who do that very successfully hand that to their client, maybe with a pen, maybe with an extra notepad or something like that, so that to the client, so that the client can make notes on the property as they're walking through. Right. So that's one way to do it. If you want to think about maybe in this digital age of being able to show a property on your tablet, iPad, cell phone. You can do it on a laptop. Probably one of the ones that flips over into a tablet may be the best option. But you can pull up HomeSnap after you've created your profile, and really you're just confirming your profile because you already have one in there because of your MLS subscription. But go to homesnap.com and you'll be essentially a pro. You're going to be a HomeSnap Pro. There's another level of access after that you do pay for, but this level is included. And so what you can do is pull up any properties that are in the MLS that you're part of. You can pull up any of the private agent notes right there on your cell phone, right there on your tablet, right there on that platform. So as you're showing this property, you're familiar with it, they're familiar with it. Maybe you give them the printout, but as you're showing the property, you can bring it up on your iPad, tablet, cell phone if needed, and be able to digitally look at everything. Pictures, all of the listing information, agent to agent notes, school rankings. And one of the best features I think of this platform is towards the bottom, there's actually property lines. And so there's an overhead satellite map view, and it's going to trace out the property lines for that property. Now, they say, and we all know, it's not a survey that's written on there. It is from the tax records. And so those can be a little bit off, so know that. But it at least helps you when you're on that back deck showing that client, oh, look at this beautiful backyard. And maybe there's a fence that only goes halfway through the property, right? So sometimes we see that for animals or kids or something like that. Maybe the property goes back another 20, 50, 100 feet, 800 feet, whatever it is. You can look at that map in real time with your client and show them, hey, actually the property line isn't there. It's actually, a good distance behind there. Or maybe there's a fence on the property that shouldn't be there, right? That didn't start on that property. So a lot of things you can see there. And so it's just a really nice format to be able to look at in one page, all the details about that property, legit from the MLS, but then also be able to share a lot of information with your client from that platform. So huge fan of HomeSnap. It is, from what I've seen, the best way to digitally show a property right there with you, with having all of the notes. The other great thing is it keeps you from having to print, tons and tons of pieces of paper and keep up with all of those. Also, if you are scheduling a showing on the fly through your Showing Time app, you may not have had a chance to go to a printer, right? So having that home snap, you can pull that property up right there with you, show your client the information, and go see that property. So that's a little bit about home snap.
Absolutely. That's super cool. And cite the source with HomeSnap. I may have mentioned this in some of our other conversations, but especially as a new agent, don't be so concerned or don't worry about the fact that you don't know the answer to everything.
Yes.
Because a piece of advice that I received as a newly licensed agent, I'm going to pass along to you guys too, which is it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have to get back to somebody. You are oftentimes not going to know the answer to a question, even though you've looked at the MLS printout, even though you got there early and you turned the lights on. They are inevitably going to ask you something that you are not going to know. Instead of just giving an answer that's wrong, which is going to do way more harm than it's going to do anybody any good, just let them know that's a great question, and you'll get back with them. And same thing with HomeSnap. This is what HomeSnap is showing, but nothing's going to be a substitute for that survey. But I also want to talk about feedback. And I want to talk about that in the event that you need to cancel a showing, that you want to make sure that you do cancel that through Showing Time, if that's where you made that appointment, and that you give the other agent courtesy. And feedback after a showing is a courtesy in our industry. It's a expectation, and it's something that you really want to provide. And You want to be polite and professional with that feedback, but you want to be honest too. And maybe the property's simply just not what the buyer expected. Maybe there's another property they liked better, but that feedback is so valuable to the listing agent and to the seller.
Yeah, definitely. And just so you know, that feedback is generated automatically, or the request for the feedback, as you book that appointment. So you book the appointment after you show the property, you're going to get an email that says, please rate, this property, and it will have some set questions. If you're on the listing side, you can go in and customize those questions if you want to. But the stock questions are really good and really good information to be able to take back to your seller. So much like what Derek just said, even if you're on the buy side, think about it when you're on the sell side, on the list side, that you want to be able to take that feedback and provide it to that seller. And who knows, maybe you see the property, the seller says it's or the buyer says it's overpriced. They really like it, but they're going to go consider some other properties. You provide the feedback that your buyer gave you to that listing agent on that request, and then that listing agent contacts you and says, hey, we're actually going to reduce the price of the property. We've been thinking about it, and they contact you because you've provided that feedback, and the buyer liked it. They just thought it was overpriced, or whatever the case is, right? So
Yes.
always some great ways and great tools to be able to shine as a new agent. So
Right. And are there any other listings in that community? Think about the route that you or the buyer may take, because we started off talking about the importance of making the appointment, and it is super important, but it is common to be in a neighborhood and the buyer see another property for sale and they want to go in that home. And it may be tempting, but you really need to have an appointment. So you don't want to just go up to a lockbox and open it up because you can and show a home. Not a lot of times these properties are seller occupied. They are not vacant. So
That's right. That's right. One other point about the showing time is Derek talked about agent previewing property. There's a spot in showing time to be able to drop down where it says the client you're representing. Well, actually, you'll have a spot before that says it's an agent preview. So you can go schedule an agent preview through showing time. That helps you keep track of it. It helps the listing agent know that you're previewing that property. And especially if it's vacant, you're more likely probably to go preview that property as a new agent, because you're trying to learn what's in the area or the neighborhood. You're getting a good feel, and you can kind of spend a little more time there without, having the sellers needing to come back into that property if it's vacant and open. So still booking those times on showing time, booking your clients on there. 3 great tools, using showing time, using the e-key, and using Home Snap. Anything else, Derek?
yes, and if you are previewing a property, because one of the great things about our industry is you don't have to wait to actually have a client to really start jumping in there and learning. And follow that property, though. You've seen it. Follow it. Keep watching it down the road. It's eventually going to close, and you will see what is the percentage of sold price versus what it was listed for. And as time goes on, you can compare that to another property in that community or neighborhood, and you will start to just naturally obtain an understanding as to why properties are selling for what they are selling for. 3 bedrooms versus 4. There's so many variations, but you will naturally start to get a feel for that.
That's right. Being a student of real estate will help you in your journey. So we hope this has been helpful. I'm Demo.
I'm Derek.
Thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Real Estate Game Plan podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for listening.